You're listening to the My Work, My Life show,
brought to you by Edge Executive Search.
For more information, contact us on
www.edgexec.co.za now.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's Stefan Enslin here from Edge Executive Search, and I'm very excited about today. I've actually been looking forward to it for a while. Today we have Lorein Gamaroff in the studio. For you who don't know Lorein is CEO and founder of Bankymoon. Bankymoon is a software company focusing on blockchain technology. They help companies to integrate distributed ledgers into their business. I mean, it's a mouthful, but Lorein is going to take us through that. I mean, but also as one of South Africa's foremost blockchain expert, Lorein has been invited around the world to speak on digital currencies and distributed ledgers and their benefits for emerging economies. He's addressed the International Monetary Fund, the FBI, the World Bank, Commonwealth, I can't even speak, Lorein. Sorry, you overshadow me. So, Secretariat, the South African Reserve Bank, and lots and lots. I mean, he offers insight and guidance to business executives and advises government on blockchain technology and their implications. So, welcome, Lorein.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks for having me.
So I think before we get to that, I think one of the things that we, as a show, we've been focusing on is specifically individuals who have completely re-engineered themselves and came out of a working corporate environment and started their own thing. Maybe you can just take us through your journey, Lorein.
Sure. Well, I'll start right at the beginning. You know, as a kid, I was always interested in computers. You know, I had my dad's Apple I Mac, and with my brother, we always played computer games. And so I really thought, you know, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get into computers. And then I had a bursary at Rhodes University, and so I went and did a computer science degree, but also did music. So it was my two majors were music and computer science. And in those days, there was no such thing. You know, people were sort of messing around with electronic music, but you know, you had to be honors if you wanted to have the computer science music lab. But I went there, didn't finish my degree, didn't finish my computer science degree. It was because of programming that threw me off. I just couldn't stand it. But then left university, but also while I was at university, the internet started being born. You know, we had the first web browsers and all that sort of thing, and you know, suddenly the whole world opened up to me, and I thought, okay, this is for sure. I want to be involved with the internet, and so got out of university, got some rubbishy jobs designing web pages, and taught myself actually how to program on the job. You know, a lot of people you know, think about university as this necessity, and I don't want to bash universities, but I do think that era of that institutionalized educational thing is changing. You know, you can now get an MIT education for free online. Why do you need to go and spend 3 years at a very expensive university, which is very inefficient? So nowadays, you know, when I tell people about you know, how to go about your career, you know, a lot of it is self-taught. You know, get some entry-level job, learn on the job, be committed. There's so many resources online on the internet, because that was my journey. That's what took me, you know, to the place where I am today, being in love with the internet and learning everything I know now on the internet. So that's where I am now today. I have this business, and it all comes from that.
At what point did you decide, now I'm stepping out of a monthly income kind of thing, starting my own business from scratch, and I have nothing? What was that turning point?
Well, there were a lot of things that came together, you know, to get me to this position where I am today. It wasn't just a case of, okay, I'm going to leave it all behind and move on. You know, I have 4 boys and I have a wife, and you know, they can be expensive. So it was a difficult decision, but also having been involved with Bitcoin since almost its inception, since 2010, it allowed me to then become knowledgeable enough, and also to actually save enough in terms of Bitcoin, because the price has gone up, to now say, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit my life to this thing, and launch right into it. So it's very difficult when you have a stable job, especially if you have responsibilities and commitments. You know, you have dependence. It's very, very hard. So I just think that because of the right time and the right place, you know, with the right knowledge, the right everything, it was a lot easier than I think it probably would be for most people. So I'm not actually such a a brave, intrepid explorer willing to launch into the unknown. A lot was sort of set up for me, I'd say.
But I think I think you need to give yourself more credit. I mean, you took on something that's completely kind of new still, that from a technology point of view, and you're building a career and a business around Bitcoin. I think that's one of the things I actually want to get into. So maybe, if you can. There are all these terms that even confuse me. I mean, we talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and cryptocurrency and distributed ledger and crowdfunding, etc. Maybe tell me a little bit about more about Bankymoon and where all of this fits together.
Okay, so for about 20 years now I've been working. I left Rhodes 97, so this is the 20th year. And I've always been working at tech companies, software companies, building out software for financial services and energy companies and advertising and all that sort of thing. And being in Africa, where you're always trying to you're trying to create services for a market that's not so financially sophisticated. There's always this idea of it would be nice if we could create digital financial services for people without having to use a bank. Banks have quite a barrier to entry. A lot of people mistrust banks. In a lot of areas in South Africa, there's a lot of mobile connectivity, but no banking services per se. Yeah. So, I've always been confronted with this issue. How do we create digital payments for people who don't have bank accounts, where they have mobile devices? And then 2010 came along, and I heard about Bitcoin, and I thought, this is amazing. This is an internet currency that you just need a mobile device. It's global. You can send it to anyone in the world. This is the answer. And I was working in the energy industry at the time, and one of our biggest issues was prepaid electricity, and how do people buy prepaid electricity? Because in Africa, there's a huge rollout to replace postpaid meters with prepaid meters. Now, that's fine for the utilities, because then people can't consume electricity without paying for it. But it means now people who only live in a cash economy, how do they go and buy stuff? And it was very difficult. I heard about Bitcoin. I thought, this is perfect. Why don't we create a Bitcoin prepaid electricity system? The company I was at the time was a startup, and they weren't interested in Bitcoin. They thought it was dodgy and related to criminals, as everyone kind of first hears about it. And I thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to try and pursue this, and I left that company and then founded Bankymoon, because I had the sense that this certainly is the future. In fact, Bitcoin, when I say I was at the right time at the right place, when I was a student, just coming out of school, that's when the internet just started, became consumer friendly, and average people could be on the internet. And when I heard about Bitcoin, the whole evolution of Bitcoin has been exactly like the evolution of the internet, where it's this strange technology that people don't understand, and it's associated with dark places, but then it evolved and it became more mainstream, and then suddenly businesses started adopting it, and eventually the banking system embraced the internet. They were reluctant at first, and when I saw Bitcoin, it had exactly the same kind of evolution. It started out weird and strange and technical, and nobody understands it, and what is it, and drug dealers are using it, and terrorists and all that. And so I just felt like I had deja vu, like it was another technology that was confronting us. And, this is the thing about human beings. If you look at all technology, I speak a lot at conferences, and I always mention that when there's a new technology, people don't embrace it. They look at it and they say, oh, why do I need this? This is dodgy, and Bitcoin was exactly the same thing. But when you actually study the technology, and then you also think about money, a lot of people don't understand money. They just think it's these pieces of paper that we earn. When you look at what makes something money, you realize that Bitcoin actually is exactly the same thing as the money that we have today, but it has a few extra things that make it even better than money. The fact that it's limited in supply and it acts kind of like gold. So, I was being aware of payments and issues with payments and finance and money, and I was born in Zim, and we all remember 2008, the financial collapse, of the Zim dollar. You could see how the financial system right now is broken. And in fact, I think that we're headed into another financial crisis that's going to rock the world, like in 2008, but this time for real. People are losing faith in currencies. We see hyperinflation happening around the world. Look at Venezuela and other countries as well. Bitcoin just makes so much sense, especially if you have my sort of background, a technical background, dealing with financial services, being there when the internet was being born. seeing this trajectory. And so that's why it just made so much sense to me. And it was easy for me to say, all right, this is not such a big risk, me, diving into this now, because it is the future. And every day that has gone by, I've been vindicated. And I now spend my life spreading that message and saying, listen, everybody, of course it's weird, but the internet was weird. Why don't you get involved?
I think that's. We by nature we are skeptics. So
Sure.
So even for me, from a Bitcoin point of view, I have all these questions about who creates Bitcoins, what stops them from pushing a lot more through the system, things like that. Is it a demand and supply situation? Those are the things that kind of scares me. And
yes.
And we love to hold money, and
well, not really
touch
anymore.
it.
I mean, do you how much money do you have in your wallet right now?
No, you're right.
We transact digitally all the time. I mean, the money that we have doesn't exist at all. It's little numbers on a spreadsheet in a bank. So whether it's in a bank or a decentralized, which is what Bitcoin is, and a decentralized ledger, it's exactly the same thing.
So what is blockchain?
So blockchain is actually the technology that makes Bitcoin possible. So if you think about email and you think about the internet, now internet makes email possible.
Yeah.
We can move messages along on the internet. Well, Bitcoin needs to move along this technology called blockchain. And that's all it is. But we're starting to think that maybe blockchain can be used for other things, like the internet isn't just for email, it's for video streaming or Skype chats or that sort of thing.
So I read somewhere as well that you're starting your own kind of wallet called
Yes.
Sendbee. Is it similar to blockchain?
Well, now Bankymoon, it's been around for about 3 years, and I've been focused on blockchain, trying to see what other use cases are there. And that's where I've been working with corporates and all that sort of thing. But in the 3 years now that I've been focused on this, I've become very skeptical that blockchain is going to be this fantastic thing that changes the world. And in fact, the real revolution here is Bitcoin. I always say that we're missing the Bitcoin wood for the blockchain trees. Now because of that, I've realized, okay, it's actually Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not really politically correct, and so all these corporates are embracing blockchain. But I've decided, that it's actually Bitcoin. It was always Bitcoin, and it is in fact Bitcoin. So I've now decided to created a new company called Sendbee with the ex-CEO and founder of Angus of eBucks. His name's Angus Brown. Yeah. He's seen the light, and we are now building out a very simple payment ecosystem for Bitcoin. Right now, if people say, okay, I like this idea of Bitcoin, but where do I get them? Where do I put them? Where do I spend them?
Was one of my questions as well. Where do I start? What does it cost?
What's going on?
Yeah.
So what we have now is we are saying, all right, we're going to create these kind of like iTunes gift cards, these vouchers that you'll see in our Pick and Pay and Checkers and all that. And you can go and hand over cash at the counter, get a Bitcoin voucher, and then using our mobile wallet, which is another thing that's very difficult. There's a lot of Bitcoin wallets out there, but they're hard to use. We're making a wallet that is going to be easy for my grand to use. That's my mission. So you'll be able to redeem those vouchers onto your mobile wallet, and then we also have a payment gateway. So what you'll do is when you go into a shop, like around here, you'll see SnapScan and Zapper. You're going to see Sendbee payments as well, and you can actually pay with Bitcoin at the retailer. Also, we have the ability to send Bitcoin directly to mobile money recipients in other countries. So Zim. So let's say you want to send money to a family member in Zimbabwe. Right now it's complicated. Western Union and all those are very expensive. What you can do is you can buy a gift card, you can punch in a number, and it'll send directly to EcoCash in Zim, to an EcoCash recipient. So we think that that's going to be another major a disruptor with remittances as well, and also to bring it down to a much simpler, cheaper way for expats to send money back home.
So Bitcoin, I must be honest. I know of Bitcoin. I've never used or any of it.
I must send you something.
And what denominations do they come? Is like 1 or 2 Bitcoins, or what?
Yeah, so
you buy a coin.
Yes, well, okay. First of all, they don't exist as coins. There's no like token that's a Bitcoin. It's kind of, if you think about rands, if you just replace that R with a B, that's exactly what a Bitcoin is. You can actually have cents of Bitcoin. You can buy 1 cent of Bitcoin. The only difference there, which is also a kind of a leap for your brain, is that there's not 100 cents in a Bitcoin. There's 100 million cents in a Bitcoin. So
it's a bit of a mind.
Yeah, you got to think about all those different decimal places.
Okay. One of the things I saw one of your presentations on Emma Winnie, on the Emma Winnie project, and I've actually seen it twice, and every time it really gives me goosebumps.
Have you seen the TEDx talk? I was in Switzerland
No.
in May, and I gave a TEDx talk about that. Please Google Gamaroff and TEDx, and you'll see my video.
Maybe that's the one where you start with the huge Zim dollars, and it was quite incredible.
Okay.
Maybe you can tell us about that project with MIT, because that really is quite a fascinating situation.
Okay, so that stems from where I came from the energy industry and prepaid metering. And, I thought, what are the use cases for a prepaid meter that can accept cryptocurrencies? And by the cryptocurrency just means Bitcoin kind of currencies. There's lots of different Bitcoins out there today, and that's very confusing again for people. We call that group of currencies cryptocurrencies. So what I was thinking of as use cases for a Bitcoin prepaid meter. And one of them would be if you're a student studying abroad and you're living in a digs and you run out of money, you'd phone your mom and say, please send me money. It would take days and it would be very expensive to get there, and then you could pay your bill. But now you can say, Mom, I need to pay my electricity. So she can send a Bitcoin directly to the meter from wherever she is in the world at very low cost and almost instantly, and then pay for the energy. Another use case would be, imagine a Bitcoin prepaid meter at a needy school somewhere in the middle of Africa. Now, what we could do is we could say to foreign donors, look, you can now directly fund the energy of that school in terms of foreign aid. Instead of sending that money to some person who then puts it in their pocket and you don't know what's going on.
True.
What you can do now is you can directly fund the energy of that school. So you can make a direct contribution to that school and support it. And the money is going only for energy at that school and not being diverted in any way. So I was talking about this at conferences, and then my friend Ed Hesse, who's this Viennese who has a blockchain company, he heard about this and he said, hey, Lorein, I'm going to give a talk at MIT in Boston at a conference. Why don't I, during the talk, send a Bitcoin to the meter and we can light up the school and you can Skype in. And so if you again YouTube TEDx Gamaroff, you'll see the video of this.
Yeah.
What happened was I went down there. It was about 3:00 in the morning. It was dark. There was no energy on the meter, and I Skyped into the conference and I talked to the delegates. And then Ed sent a Bitcoin to the meter. In those days, it was about 7,500 rands worth of Bitcoin. And it went directly to the meter, and a few seconds later, the lights turned on.
Wow.
And the conference delegates at MIT actually could see the lights being switched on because of this payment that was made. And it was very impactful, and in the dark, sitting behind me, all the teachers and parents, and then the lights came on, and suddenly the delegates at MIT could see them. So it was a very impactful demonstration to show how amazing it is to have this money that you can now send anywhere in the world without having to use a bank, without having to use a remittance company, and you can directly, send money for a service, and also in this case directly to a machine, directly to something that allows school to suddenly have energy, and it's just a demonstration of the use cases of a decentralized, which is what this is, payment system.
But from what I see and what I read as well, you've got a passion for service, etc. That's how you grew up as well. You say you want to change Africa,
yes,
or the world. So
Africa, I'm African, so Africa is my continent.
Okay, the what is next for Bankymoon now?
Well, Bankymoon's kind of dormant. I'm not, as I said, I've become skeptical and cynical around blockchain technology. And also, it's kind of being co-opted by organizations like banks, and I don't really care for banks. So that's kind of dormant. My focus now is on Centbee, and my mission is to bring Bitcoin to Africa, make Bitcoin accessible and usable, and to change lives and to protect us from the kind of vagaries and whims of bad monetary policy. I see that the 80% of Africans who are unbanked can benefit from this. Remittances are so expensive, cross-border remittances, so now we can cheapen them. We can protect people from hyperinflation, because that is an absolute reality, and it's going to be happening to all of us, even in South Africa. So that's my mission, is to save the world through this.
Oh, that's fantastic. That is a wonderful mission. We've got a couple of questions coming through the Twitter line, so maybe we can just touch on them. How do I how do I know where to buy a Bitcoin, and how can I tell it's a real Bitcoin?
Right. Now, this is a big problem. Whenever you have money, there's going to be scamsters out there, and they're going to try and sell you some deal or promise you big returns, like Ponzi schemes and all that sort of thing. In fact, just yesterday, I had a phone call from some random person who said, listen, I want my Bitcoins. I got them through something called Coin Trade Club or something. And I quickly Googled Coin Trade Club, and it was just this like flashy website and promising 30% a month on return, and all this stuff. So it is difficult to know what's going on. But though if there's one thing I can tell people to do now is there's one company in this country that I trust where you can buy Bitcoins, and that's Luno.com. Okay. Now Luno.com is an online exchange. So it's a little bit complicated. What you need to do is you log on, you create an account, you have to upload ID books and all this kind of stuff. And then what you can do is you can buy and sell Bitcoin on the exchange. An exchange just means a marketplace. Oh. People are buying, people are selling. Now, if you create an account on Luno, you'll get a wallet. And then you have to EFT rands into your trading account, and then you have to buy it. And that's, you see, when I say it's complicated, most people are going to struggle with that. But unfortunately, that is until Centbee is live, which is hopefully in the next month or two. That's the only way where people can buy it. And once you have your Bitcoin, you hold it. You don't let anybody have it because it's money. And if you give it to somebody else, it's like giving money to somebody else.
Because now they ask one of the questions as well, and I think we've covered that, is how much does one Bitcoin cost? But it's not one Bitcoin. You can buy 100 rands, or how does it work?
Yes, exactly. So there's a finite supply. That means there's a limited number of Bitcoins that will ever be created. And we can talk about how they're created, if you like, just now. So that means now there's a limited supply, and each Bitcoin right now is about 35,000 Rand. But you don't buy one Bitcoin. You can buy literally 100 Rands worth of Bitcoin. So you can have 200 Rands of Bitcoin in a mobile wallet right now, which means you'll have 0.0003 Bitcoins. And, again, that's a mind stretch, but you can do that. You don't have to have one whole Bitcoin. In the future, it's very unlikely that people will ever have a whole Bitcoin, because I believe Bitcoin will grow enormously in value over the years to come, especially if the global financial system does start imploding, which I do expect it to happen.
But would you then recommend people start buying Bitcoins, even if it's like on a monthly basis, and stocking up?
Well, now, okay. So, of course, giving investment advice and people losing money. I think that buying Bitcoin right now, it's a hairy proposition. Yeah. You're going to be up and down on a roller coaster. I've been on this roller coaster for 7 years now, and it's stomach churning. But I do think Bitcoin as an alternative asset class, something that you can invest in, I think is a good idea. I think anybody who has a few $100 lying around should go and buy some Bitcoin and just hold it and sit on it and see what happens. You worst case scenario, you lose your couple $100, but in my worldview, you're going to possibly be able to retire on those. So I would suggest people look at it and acquire.
Now, how do I check the value of my Bitcoin, like, say, from week to week or whatever?
Yeah, so now that's where you would go to a marketplace where people are buying and selling. And what you can do is you can check what the latest price somebody bought a Bitcoin for. And Luno.com actually has on their website the latest price. And I looked at it this morning, it was about 34,000, which means somebody just bought some Bitcoin for that amount.
Okay.
Yeah, so Luno.com is probably the best place in South Africa to check.
If people want to get more information, do you have like a website where they can also go and look?
You can just say, what is Bitcoin in YouTube, and you're going to have 1,000 videos. That's what I'd recommend.
Okay, yeah, because your Bankymoon site as well has got a lot of your videos and stuff on there as well.
Yes.
One thing I just wanted to check, what is a distributed ledger? Because that's a word that comes up as well.
Yes, I know it's jargon that is there to impress corporates. If you think about a spreadsheet, a spreadsheet tracks information. So you can have accounts on a spreadsheet, you can have a name and a balance, so that's what a ledger is. If you've been to a shop, or somewhere, a person will write down, bought this for that much, sold this for that much. Okay. So that's what a ledger is. It just records transactions. How much you bought, how much you sold. Now, when we talk about distributed ledgers, what we mean is that the ledger isn't in one location. It's not a spreadsheet on your laptop. It's now copied on multiple laptops around the world. So now we've, in the same way you would distribute something, like flyers, at a corner, at a street corner, you can now go and distribute that ledger around the world. And that's what makes Bitcoin very interesting. There isn't a bank that's holding the accounts in Bitcoin. That ledger is recorded on thousands of computers all around the world. And so if you wanted to try and manipulate it or corrupt it or do something like that or create fraudulent transactions, you'd have to do it on everybody's computer. So it makes it very secure, very difficult to manipulate. And that's what makes these distributed ledgers very interesting, especially in terms of corporates, because now they can have multiple participants that are competitors but yet all need the same source of information. One wouldn't trust the other with that information, but because it's distributed, now they can, do that.
And the traditional banks, what do you think the response to this is? Are they getting on board?
Well, they're getting on board with blockchain for sure. I mean, there's a lot of hype around blockchain. There has been for the last 2 years. So, and I know all these banks. I work with them. I train them. They are all actively right now looking at blockchain, looking at distributed ledgers, seeing how they can make their business models more efficient, cheaper, better, faster. That's the dream. But in my view, that I think that the hype, with all technologies, there's always what's called a hype cycle, a hype bubble. And the hype right now, the internet went through it, where there was this huge amount of hype in 2000 about the internet, how it's going to change the world and it's amazing and all this stuff. And then there was this pop, and that we crashed into going into 2000 with a .com crash. Well, to me, the what's happening now is blockchain is hyping like that, and all these corporates and organizations are looking at it to try and transform their industries and save and all that sort of thing. But I think what they're realizing now is that it's not like that. It looks like there's very few use cases for blockchain technology or distributed ledger technology. And to me, the only apparent one that's obvious is money as currency, a distributed. And now banks can't do that. Yeah. I mean, banks depend on controlling the financial system, controlling money. And if you're saying, look, I can now have a bank account without a bank, of course they're not going to embrace that. So I don't think it's. Probably the regulators are not that happy with this as well. Well, we love to regulate everything. Yes, regulators are. I mean, they're learning as much as everybody else. They're also trying to understand what's going on here. So, and I work with the central bank. We have meetings with them regularly. We discuss CentB, and they're still trying to figure out what is this thing. What is Bitcoin, and why would anyone care about it? It's this. It's intangible. It makes no sense. So they're also going through a learning process, and they depend on businesses like mine, so they can watch us and see what's going on, and then, okay, I get it. Now we can start, plugging up holes that we see. Why are you sending money without knowing who your customers is? We want you to now put Fika on there or something. Yeah. So they are actually using us as a case study, if you like, to be able to learn and then develop potentially new policies in the future. Oh, that's half an hour went very quickly. It was quite insightful, Lorein, and thank you very much. I know you're quite a busy man. Thanks for making the time to talk to us, and I will definitely be following this a lot closer. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Thanks.
You have been listening to the My Work, My Life show on brandlife.co.za.
Proudly brought to you by Edge Executive Search.
Visit Edge Executive Search on
www.edgexec.co.za now
for more opportunities, events, and our latest podcasts. brandlife.co.za